Hello, Rich Christian Fellowship. So we haven't done a Theology Thursday in a while, and I thought this week, in light of some of the things that have come down from the Arizona Supreme Court, and also some of the reactions that have been happening by politicians, by legislators and representatives in Arizona, that this would be a good opportunity for me to jump back in and begin offering maybe some Theology Thursdays. And so this is hopefully, as we're moving forward, maybe something that we can hopefully offer to you as a church. So I want to, for those of you who aren't aware, I know many of you probably are, for those of you who aren't aware, earlier this week, the Arizona Supreme Court decided to ruled in favor of upholding the 1864 Arizona ban on abortion. Now this, which is a great ruling. That's a great thing for those of us who are abolitionists. But one of the things that we recognize as we're having this conversation, hopefully we recognize, is that when it comes to the judges and the role of judges in our country, the judges aren't supposed to make laws; they're just supposed to referee. In this way, we should probably think about kind of using the analogy of a referee at a basketball game. The referee at a basketball game doesn't make the laws. They are just supposed to ref based in terms of interpretation on the law as to whether or not the thing in place is legal or not. That's the role of the judges. So it's not necessarily the case that those justices who sit on our Arizona Supreme Court are in favor of the 1864 law. In fact, from my understanding, they even encourage people to write, if you want the law changed, then you have to write legislation to change the law. So this is, if anything, this is maybe just a very momentary victory for us to kind of gather our thoughts in terms of this issue of abortion as it's being fought right now in Arizona. And I wanted to take some time to respond to some of the things and the arguments that I'm hearing from people like Carrie Lake, Katie Hobbs, or Donald Trump, or even Juan Sisani. Juan Sisani is one of our local congressmen here in the area. I voted for Juan Sisani in the previous election to help get him. I supported him. And I want to respond to something that he sent out in terms of a response to the Arizona Supreme Court decision. I want to read his official response here and also give some feedback to it. I want us to be able to think as a church, one, obviously to think biblically about this matter of abortion, but two, also to think logically about this. That we need to really take this moment to pause and ask the question: how do we respond to these talking points that are coming from those in the pro-abortion camp? And so I was disheartened by Juan Sisani's post, and the reason why I'm choosing him is because he's my local representative, and because his particular talking points are the same ones I'm hearing from Katie Hobbs, that we're also hearing from Carrie Lake and many others, Doug Ducey. So I want to just share with you a couple of the things that he said and respond to them. So first, Juan Sisani says, today's ruling, and he's referring to that Arizona Supreme Court decision earlier this week, today's ruling is a disaster for women and providers. In no way is this a disaster for women. It is frequently the case that the left argues that, the pro-abortion position argues that abortion is a constitutional right. This is about women's rights. But brothers and sisters, I want to point us back to the Constitution. It is not a constitutional right to murder someone. A baby inside of the womb is a human life. That is a baby. From the moment of conception, it is a unique and distinct human being. To end that life is murder. That's there. Nowhere in the Constitution does it provide the right for mothers to murder their babies, whether the baby is outside of the womb or inside of the womb. There's that distinction of the location of the baby is an arbitrary distinction. From the moment of conception all the way to natural death, the rights of all Arizona citizens should be first and foremost. All Arizona citizens have the right to live, have the right to life. And so what we should really be arguing for here is an equal protection under the law for all human beings. Not just for those who are born or those who are past an arbitrary 15 weeks, as Doug Ducey was arguing. But he says this, Juan Sisani continues in his next sentence, in Arizona, our 15-week law protected the rights of women and new life, he says. This is categorically not true. This is a false statement. It is not the right of a mother, again, to murder her baby. This isn't a constitutional right. This isn't a state right. This is an immoral thing. 15-week mark is an arbitrary distinction. There is no distinction between the human life at 14 weeks in terms of its value and 16 weeks. Now, it is frequently the case that the pro-abortion argument will say, well, it's because it's so small. Well, it doesn't matter. The size of a human is not what gives a human value. The location of a human is not what gives a human value. These are bona fide babies. These are real humans inside of the mother's womb, and their life needs to be protected. So it's not his statement that this protects new life. How does this protect new life? How does this protect the life of the child when we're murdering it? This is such a nonsensical argument and statement that is being made by both Republicans and Democrats. And we need to think clearly about these things and speak clearly about them. He goes on to say, it respected women and the difficult decision of ending a pregnancy. These are all, of course, a euphemism. When he says ending a pregnancy, he's talking about murder. Yes, it is a difficult decision to murder. But this, again, is not a woman's right to murder. Humans don't have that right. He says, one I will never personally experience and won't pretend to understand. One of the things that he's doing here in terms of this talking point is this is kind of a subtle thing that the pro-abortionist argument has said for a long time, which is basically, if you're not a woman, if you haven't experienced this, then you can't speak to this issue, which is categorically false. The abolitionists, for example, the abolitionists in the 1800s, many of them were not plantation owners. They were not slave owners. But this doesn't change the fact that they didn't have the right to speak to the issue of slavery. Abortion, the murder of human beings, is everyone's business. Whether they're a man, whether they're a woman, doesn't matter. Whether they've been pregnant or not, doesn't matter. When it comes to the issue of sanctity of life, we all have a responsibility. We are our brother's keeper. We are supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves. We are supposed to speak for those who are marginalized and those who are voiceless, who do not have a voice. And brothers and sisters, we should be speaking up for and defending those in the womb who don't have a voice. So this isn't his argument that which is his subtle argument here, which is if you haven't had an abortion, or I'm not a woman, so I can't pretend to understand. What he's doing here is a subtle sidelining of anyone who's not a woman, or anyone who has not been pregnant. And he says this, he continues, as my record shows, I'm a strong supporter of empowering women to make their own healthcare choices. This is not a healthcare choice. Murdering another human is not a healthcare choice. Regardless of how inconvenient their lives are, regardless of whether or not we think that their lives have value, murdering another human being is not a healthcare choice. Seth Dillon, in his interview, Seth Dillon is with the Babylon Bee, he said this, and I agree with him, abortion is to healthcare what rape is to lovemaking. The two things, they are antithetical. To say that it is healthcare to murder a human is nonsensical, and it's evil. It's giving justification. What Juan Sisani is doing here is he's giving justification to the pro-abortion position which ought not to happen. And he says, and I oppose a national abortion ban. Well, what he's saying here is I oppose that murder of human beings from the time of conception to 15 weeks. I oppose that. So he is coming against and opposing a national abortion ban, he says, which would outlaw murder of our most vulnerable humans. That's what he's against. He is against a national ban, or even a state ban, from what he's saying here, against murder. This is absolutely nonsensical. He goes on to say that the territorial law is archaic. He's referring to the territorial law of Arizona from 1864, which the Arizona Supreme Court ruled to uphold. He says the territorial law is archaic. Well, here's some other things that are archaic then. The Bible then is archaic, and the Constitution from our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence in 1776 our Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. All of those things came before the time that Arizona was a state. And this is one of the things that I hear Carrie Lake and Katie Hobbs and Juan Sisani stating is, well, that's an old law, therefore it's bad. Well, how about the 13th Amendment? The 13th Amendment, which prohibits slavery, that predates this law, which was codified in 1901. It predates that. Should we then say that those amendments are, well, they're old and they're archaic, therefore they're bad? He goes on. He says we must do better for women, and we must do better for women, including those women who have been murdered in the womb, including those women. Abortion is not helping women. It's not helping our country. It's not helping our nation. And we absolutely need to do better. So I hope that this at least provides an opportunity for us to begin the conversation in our community as the Rich Christian Fellowship, to begin thinking logically and to begin thinking biblically about these things. And so I also know we have an election coming up, and I would really encourage you, if these things distress you, that Juan Sisani says, if you live in his district, I would encourage you to call his office, to reach out to him, just speak respectfully, speak lovingly, but speak directly and plainly to these issues, that we need to protect all of human life, not make some arbitrary mark at 15 weeks that all of a sudden now it's a human, but before that it's not. To speak directly and clearly, and to speak up on behalf of those who are the orphans, who are the marginalized, and those who have no voice in our state here in Arizona. Well, I love you. I love you all. I'm praying for you, and I look forward to having more conversations inside our church and inside of our community about these extremely important issues. May God bless you and the rest of your week.